Colleagues, if we could take our places, please. And let's see how many of you are observant. Spot the difference. The man himself. We're going to take a vote on her. I'm joking. Welcome back, conference. We will begin this session with motion 22 and then return to motion 14 and work through that order. After motion 24, we will take emergency motions 2 and 3 and finally finish conference on motion 25. I am conscious that we are running slightly behind on the agenda. However, we have built in sufficient time for all motions this afternoon to be debated. I would ask delegates, other than proposers and seconders, and those who have already indicated their wish to speak on a motion, to use the 2-minute mics or not, sparingly. I do not want to artificially bring a debate to an end if there are still speakers wanting to speak, but we'll have to do so if we have too many people at the 2-minute mics. It's not personal, it's professional. So if we could begin with motion 22, John Barr and Tina Batkin, please.
John Barr from the Bristol branch. Thank you, President, for adjusting the order to enable our motion to start this afternoon. I note this equalities motion sits very comfortably between the SEND motions. I propose this motion on behalf of the Leaders for Disabled Equality Network, known until the last few weeks as the Disabled Members Network. Our network's 2024 motion in Newport was a call to that conference for solidarity. Our 2026 motion builds on that solidarity and is a call for action. I'm now going to pass to the seconder of the motion.
Okay. Thank you, John. I'm Tina, an active member of the Leaders for Disabled Equality Network, a Manchester branch member and a retired deputy head teacher in SENCO. I'm seconding this motion because my own experience as an autistic person working in a primary school environment means that I have a personal insight into the specific barriers faced by disabled employees. I spent the majority of my career in education feeling that I needed to hide my condition and overcompensate for the challenges I encountered in the workplace. Over time, this had a significant impact on my long-term health and well-being, contributing to early retirement from the job that I loved. We know that many experienced and highly capable leaders continue to leave the profession prematurely. It is therefore imperative that measures are put into place to ensure that all school staff have access to the support needed for them to thrive and make a positive contribution. ITT data indicates that 20% of the current cohort of postgraduate trainee teachers identify as having a disability. This upward trend is extremely positive for our sector, but creates an urgency to implement a universal offer that guarantees that these teachers and our future leaders are welcomed into workplaces where their needs will be understood and supported. As a union, the NAHT already recognises the valuable contribution that our disabled and neurodivergent members make in their role as educators and school leaders. Mandating the implementation of clear and robust policies that reflect and accommodate the needs of all employees will help to strengthen whole school cultures that are rooted in equity and justice. The leaders of Disabled Equality call on conference delegates to support our motion. John.
Thanks, Tina. I remind myself what my life experience and the social model has taught me. That as a deaf person, I'm not disabled because of my hearing loss, but because the adjustments I need are not always in place, and when they are, sometimes they're not used. As Tina has reminded us, our neurodivergent colleagues are not disabled because of their neurology. They're disabled because the adjustments they need are not planned, or not put in place, or not sustained when school leadership changes. Some leaders and school staff managing extended perimenopause and menopause are not disabled because they go through a biological change that all women must go through. They're disabled because the adjustments they need and the understanding they need over those years are not made. Leaders using sticks, frames and wheelchairs are not disabled because they have accessibility equipment. They're disabled because the environments they live and work in do not enable the equipment to be used and necessary adjustments to be made. I could go on, but I won't. A reminder, access to work funding is available if making those adjustments has a cost implication to a school or MAT budget. As I said, the renaming of our network to Leaders for Disabled Equality is part of our call to action today. The call to action asks you as conference delegates, yes, to support this motion. It also asks you as school leaders to use the NHT Reasonable Adjustment Disability Passport Guidance, the Reasonable Adjustment Disability Passport Model Policy and Templates. All of these tools were published on the NHT website this week. They are the tangible results of the 2024 motion the new conference passed. From May 2026, those tools can sustain you and your colleagues to lead effectively. From May 2026, those tools can enable all those you lead to be the most effective educators they can be. In 2026, we ask all of you to become a leader for disabled equality. Support this motion. We move.
Thank you, John and Tina. We have an indicated speaker, Anwen Ackroyd.
Hi, I'm Anwen Ackroyd. I'm a member of the LD network and I'm on EDI committee. I wanted just to say a few words about reasonable adjustment passports and the value that they bring for disabled workers. I'm a visibly disabled school leader, but my needs aren't necessarily as obvious or as unobvious as they may seem. And one of the things about a reasonable adjustment passport is that I don't have to keep repeating those needs. I don't have to say them every time something changes. And that's massive for somebody who needs reasonable adjustments, because that having to constantly reframe what you need is really exhausting in a world where we fight every day to make ourselves fit in or not. So, yeah, I won't go into basic issues like I have to check if somewhere's wheelchair accessible and then I get there and find they've got to step into the building. Or the only way to access a school in some senses is via a bin store where they've got a ramp. So there are adjustments there, but with not having to do that, it makes life easier. I'd like to just share an example of something that happened in my own school this week. We had a student come in on a known placement from a university. The student turned up on day one ready to go as a wheelchair user with a quite complex set of needs, and the university hadn't told us. So we felt we were letting down this person because we'd not made the necessary steps to make sure that they could come in on their first day known. Had they have been through this process with their university and them created a reasonable adjustments passport, all their placements would have been successful because places would have had the opportunity to make the changes necessary. So reasonable adjustment passports are really vital to make sure people can access the roles and provide that value that we offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Anwen. That motion was brought by the EDI committee on behalf of our equalities networks. And if members want to get involved, they can sign up using the codes that are now shown on the screen. We're now going to go into a vote, colleagues, please. All those in favour? And against? Unanimously carried. Thank you. We're now moving back to motion 14 for Deborah Walker's proposer and Joanne Beaver's seconder. Well run, Debs. You know I'm tight on time.
Oh, this is high. Hi, conference. Afternoon. Oh! Thank you. It's handy. I'm hoping for a less emotional performance for this motion. Mainstream, as a term, we might know it, was introduced in the 70s when the term integration evolved into a concept of inclusion and mainstreaming pupils, firmly rooted in the broader agenda of SEND. In 1997, a world before Ofsted and the national curriculum, the heady days, Excellence for All was introduced, a call for governments to adopt the principles of inclusive education. A very worthy agenda. A mission started in the 70s. I'm out of breath running down there. A mission started in the 70s, reinforced in the 90s, discussed in the noughties, stalled by austerity, blown up by COVID in the first part of this decade. And now we have a government trying to get to grips with it. But it could be into the next decade before we see any real change. And that's a long way away and post-election. This motion is focused on the broader context of the inclusion agenda, the mainstream element of our system, a system that has to work as a whole for it to have any hope of delivering excellence for our pupils. From the hippies of the 70s to the AI bots of the 21st century, governments continue to wrestle with the structures and policies to bring about an inclusive system. But while they're busy working on policies, in the real world, we're struggling with an explosion of need on a scale that no one could have anticipated, and resourcing that is so squeezed, it's squeezing out some of our best professionals. Achieving the ambition of successful inclusion is a system that goes about achieving the ambition of successful inclusion in a system that goes about improving itself in such a piecemeal, chaotic fashion so that every aspect of our education world and policy change brings us unprecedented stress and instability, us as leaders who are trying to implement it for the greater good, you know, they need to learn about change management, don't they? Conference, we have to have a bigger conversation. Think bigger and address all the facets of the problem in order to get to a solution that is viable, worthwhile and sustainable. At its most basic level, this motion on the screen here, it's about unpicking the name we give to the large majority of our schools, because names matter. Bear with me, here's a thought. A guinea pig isn't a pig, it's a rodent. Every day's a learning day, isn't it? A koala bear isn't a bear, it's a marsupial. And a killer whale isn't even a whale, it's a dolphin. A mainstream school isn't what it used to be. So let's discuss an accurate label that truly represents us. We're called mainstream, funded like mainstream, weighed and measured like mainstream, trained in ITT for mainstream, inspected like mainstream, but we're not. It's doing us a disservice and we know it. Educational reform is brought about in a holistic way. Where's the timer? It's not there. It's not there. Thank you. Education has its own universe, each aspect interconnected with others. Successive governments tinkering with different bits, funding, inclusion, accountability. They're not only are we uncertain of what kind of school we run, some days we don't even know who we are. Is that just me? If it's about being inclusive, call us inclusive. Fund us to be inclusive, train us to be inclusive, bring about accountability measures that measure our success as inclusive organisations. Allow us access to the myriad of specialist service that we need to be inclusive organisations. Give us what we need to be successful inclusive schools. Conference, inclusive schools may not be the title, but We need a correct term, so let's have a debate. Let's have a fundamental review of the definition, scope and resourcing of our mainstream sector, including funding, staffing, support, accountability. Let's start the debate and try and be better defined as who we are and what we are. Let's not be a guinea pig in a room full of rodents. Conference, I move.
Joanne Beavers, Sunderland Branch. I'm not risking the trapdoor. I second this motion.
Much appreciated, Joanne. Thank you. Conference, we are going. Is the timer working? Let's play musical chairs. Right, let's go to the vote, guys. So, all those in favour, please raise your hand. All those against? Excellent. And unanimously carried. Thank you. Motion 15, Emma Curry and Fiona Kane, please. If the timer's not working, I can give time indications. Would that help, ladies? Oh.
We won't be very long. Hi, everyone. My name's Emma Corrie. Probably the accent won't let you know this, but I am from the Northern Ireland branch, so it's lovely to see you all here. I've lived here for 20 years, haven't lost my accent at all, absolutely love Northern Ireland and won't want to live anywhere else. It's the best place to be, and I'm delighted to be here. Thank you. I was supposed to remind you about the early years fringe event in the hall, but because everything went a bit haywire, we've just done that. So if you were there, thanks so much for coming. So in Northern Ireland, as across the rest of these islands, our youngest and most vulnerable children always seem to be at the bottom of the priority list when it comes to funding and equity of resources and support. What true early intervention means is clearly not understood and most certainly not delivered by our education authority here in Northern Ireland. Last year, they proudly launched the Graduated Response Framework to support children with additional needs within our schools. The irony that they forgot to write a section for preschool children and then added it on as an afterthought just demonstrates the lack of understanding of just how vital early identification and support really is. We get one chance with these children in their early years. They are often coming into nursery school having not been identified, referred, or supported by health. We as professionals have to prove that these children require support. Our opinion is always questioned and not listened to unless it can be backed up by a diagnosis or opinion of a medical professional or body. The Graduated Response Framework slows down our ability to get the support they require and lessens the likelihood for us to ensure that the children transition into an appropriate setting for their primary one, or as you may know it, reception year in primary school. Children and their families are being failed every year, and it simply isn't good enough. Colleagues, please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Fiona?
Céad míle fáilte go Belfast, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to Belfast. We're delighted to host the conference this year. Fiona Kane, Northern Ireland branch, first-time speaker. Thank you. As a post-primary or secondary principal who sees an increasing number of children coming into my school and our phase of education with unsupported needs, it is vital that we support all of our colleagues in the early years sector so that they may have the appropriate and timely mechanisms to ensure that early intervention is a right and not a battle for the youngest children in our care. I wholeheartedly support and second this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now going to go to Dave with a National Executive view.
Conference. National Executive strongly supports this motion. We know that across our nations and Crown dependencies, SEN support is essential, and particularly in the context of Northern Ireland, we must stand together in support of a properly funded system that focuses on pupil needs and supporting leaders and avoids bureaucracy unnecessarily delaying meaningful intervention.
Thank you, Dave. And if we can go to the vote, please, colleagues. All those in favour? And all those against? Unanimously carried. Thank you. Moving on to motion 16, Claire Majuri and Katrina Moore.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Oh. I'll step back. I'm speaking to propose this motion on behalf of all colleagues across all our sectors working every day to support children with special educational needs and disabilities. In Northern Ireland, similar to all our nations, we are facing a growing reality. More and more children with more and more complex needs, and a system that is asking schools to carry that pressure without any of the structures needed to support it. We are told we are inclusive, but too often inclusion just means a space in a building, not a place in learning and not a place in belonging. SENCOs and school leaders are central to this. They are coordinating provision, they are managing increasingly complex needs, working with families, navigating systems, all while usually carrying out a full teaching load. And this is just not sustainable. And more importantly, it's not right for our children. Because this motion is not just about workload, it is about rights. The UN Convention on the Rights of the Child makes this clear. Every child has the right not just to be present, but to participate, to learn and to thrive. And this does not happen by chance. It has to be designed. Right now, too often, the system asks schools to prove need, as Emma was saying, through mountains of paperwork, to delay support through processes and to stretch already limited resources. And schools did not create this crisis, but yet we seem to be absorbing it. So this motion is very simple. We are calling on NAHT to campaign for protected, non-teaching, protected time for our SENCOs based on need. We are pressing for fully funded, sustainable SEND reform, and crucially, to push for a system that moves beyond placement and compliance towards one that is designed for belonging, participation and progress. Because inclusion is not about where a child sits in a building. It is whether or not they are part of learning. It is whether or not they are seen, known, valued and respected. And it is whether or not they belong. And if we are serious about inclusion, then we must also be serious about building the conditions that make belonging possible for all our children. Colleagues, I urge you to support this motion.
Thank you, Claire. Katrina.
Good afternoon, Amanda stood up earlier and said at one of the mics that you matter and you belong. How can we properly support our young people? And I, as a former special educational needs coordinator, know this. How can we support them to grow and to develop into the fabulous future that is ahead of them if we are not protecting those amazing people who do the hard work with those young people, or our wains, as we say? Sarah also mentioned earlier on, if we are worth it on one side, we are worth it. But my God, we need to be doing a double flick because they're doubly worth it. Totally support this motion. Thank you. And look, Rachel, I'm under time.
Well done. The Irish lasses have pulled it in for me. Thank you. Right, now I'm going to go over to Dave Woods for the National Executive view.
Conference, the National Executive strongly supports this motion. We are proud of our position adopted at Annual Conference 2025 in support of the UN CRC, and we recognise the importance of sufficient funding to fully ensure the right to an inclusive education is met.
Moving to the vote. All those in favour, please raise their hands. And against. Unanimously carried. Thank you. Moving on to motion 17. I invite Karina Hansen as a proposer and Dean Phillips as the seconder.
Diolch, Prynawn da. I move this motion out of frustration because what I'm describing today is not a failure of ambition, but a failure of delivery. And people are paying the price. The people paying the price are our children, our staff, our school communities. To be clear, we support the ALN Act in Wales, We support its early vision of identification, proper planning and the right support around every child. That ambition is right and exactly what our learners deserve. But good intentions alone do not provide staffing, time or capacity our schools need. The reality of implementation has become unsustainable. In many schools, completing and reviewing IDPs takes many hours per learner, often running into double figures. In many schools, the SENCO is also a class teacher. In smaller schools like mine, the SENCO is the head teacher, like me. And those SENCOs are working far beyond the school day just to meet their statutory duties, not because they're inefficient, but because the system demands more than it resourced, and the complexity of need is rising. Children are arriving with profiles that require specialist health input, therapeutic support, and coordinated multi-agency care. Yet we as schools are increasingly carrying those responsibilities, ones that should be shared with others or led by health and other services. We are educators, extraordinarily committed ones. We are not and cannot be the default provider for every unmet need in a child's life. And provision and support still varies significantly depending on local authority capacity and access to services. These pressures are being felt across the system, from early years settings through to post-16 provision. Conference, the gap between what legislation expects us to do and the capacity we have to deliver now poses real risk. Risk to pupil well-being, risk to staff workload, risk to school budgets, and risk to health and safety. And that's not rhetoric, that is the daily reality we're seeing in our schools. So what are we calling for? We want a full and comprehensive review of the NAHT, its workload implications, administrative demands, and an honest assessment of whether schools have the capacity to meet the level of need being identified. We are calling for a comprehensive review of funding because statutory duties cost money, and that funding is not consistently in place. Schools cannot bridge the gap on goodwill alone. We're calling for cross-agency review of responsibilities to clearly establish what education owns and what must be owned by health and other services, because the current ambiguity places disproportionate and unsustainable pressure on schools. And we are calling for urgent interim funding to support now, because longer-term reform will take time, and our schools, staff and children cannot wait. Conference, we have been patient. We've engaged constructively, implemented in good faith, advocated consistently. But patience has a limit, and the limit's been reached. When children's well-being is at risk, school leaders cannot meet their legal duties with resources they have. Welsh Government set out a transformative vision for additional learning needs. Today, we're asking them to match that vision with investment, clarity and action required to make it real. Conference, I move.
Thanks, Nadine.
Prynhawn da, colleagues, good afternoon. I'm Dean Phillips from the Swansea branch, and I second this motion. Colleagues, we support the ambition of ALM reforms, but the reality is unsustainable. Workload has risen sharply without the funding or support to match, and schools are being stretched beyond capacity. Our staff are doing everything they can, but goodwill alone cannot carry a system that is under-resourced. This motion is about making reform work through proper review, realistic expectations, and fair funding. For our pupils, our staff, and the future of inclusive education, I urge Conference to support this motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Dean. I'm now going to move to Dave Woods for a National Executive view.
Conference, the National Executive strongly supports this motion. It is particularly important that we support this motion in the context of the urgent and pressing need for SEND and ALN reforms across all nations. Conference has already heard from the earlier emergency motion on just how urgent our support for colleagues in Cymru is in ensuring ALN reforms are properly implemented.
Thank you. And if we can go to vote, please. All those in favour, raise your hand. And against? Unanimously carried. Moving on to motion 18, where we have a lead and lettered motion. I will ask Martin Vero and Vic Logan to come up to the stage, please. And if Jim Nicholson and Gareth Ellswood could be ready near the mics, that would be really appreciated.
Good afternoon, Martin Vero. I'm from Kirklees in West Yorkshire. I'm National Exec. We are school leaders in a country with an economy currently ranked 6th out of 195 countries on the planet. An economy with an estimated value of around £3.2 trillion. We're school leaders in a country that is home to around 3 million millionaires and 156 billionaires. A country where the core funding allocation for pupils with SEND in mainstream schools, some of our most vulnerable children and young people, is delivered on a notional basis. If you take time to unpick that a little and consider the language used, the problem is obvious. The definition of notional is based on a suggestion, an estimate, or an idea. It does not exist in reality. A school's budget allocation for SEND is an identified amount that is baked into the core budget, a guide to support our best endeavours to meet the needs of children with SEND. We all know the power and importance of the words that we use. At the very core of the approach to financially resourcing mainstream schools to meet the needs of our children with SEND is a complete and utter lack of ambition and a position of non-committal. You just listen to the terms used: notional, an identified amount, a guide, best endeavours, fantasy funding. It's no surprise that the formula calculations that spring from this, which are based on estimates and not actual need, they produce non-uniform outcomes across the country, often leading to severe budgetary pressure for too many of us at school. And they're a key factor in the general budget insufficiency that we keep talking about motion after motion. If that's not enough, essential core funding is effectively top-sliced and it remains inadequate itself. The national landscape is one of more and more of school leaders facing fluctuating and/or falling roles, and the harsh reality of their best endeavours being thwarted by reactive budgetary pressure, because core funding continues to be determined by pupil numbers on a single day in October. When we add weak budgets and falling roles to the flawed notional funding system for children with SEND, many have we talked about presenting with really complex and significant needs in our schools, we have what is, for many of us, a perfect storm. A perfect storm that creates workforce instability, it makes inclusion harder, it undermines long-term planning, and it worsens teacher and school leader retention and succession problems. In 2026, in the country with the 6th largest economy out of 195 countries on the planet, home to approximately 3 million millionaires and 156 billionaires, this cannot be acceptable. We can do better. We can do better than continue to pin core funding to pupil numbers and expect us to budget strategically and maintain the capacity needed to meet all the demands placed on us. We can do better than continue with a flawed notional SEND funding system that is opaque and unfit for purpose in ambition, size, scope and delivery. We can do better and look to replace it with a needs-led, fully funded system, one that is equitable, based on needs that we face in our classrooms, is transparent, ensures national consistency and leaves wider provision in our schools uncompromised. We've got to do better. Conference, I move.
Thank you, Martin. Vic?
I formally second this motion, and I leave you with that statement. It is time to do better. It's not good enough. We need to do something immediately. Thank you.
Thanks, Vic. And just before Jim and Gareth speak, just a polite reminder, you have 2 minutes between you.
Oh, that's tight. We'll go as fast as we can. Jim Nicholson, Stockport Branch, and speaking on behalf of North West Exec. So, conference, can I ask you to imagine reading this job advert, please? Our board seeks to appoint a highly motivated and suitably experienced leader with a warped sense of humour to take our wonderful organisation through this next exciting phase of development. We offer you the following: an uncertain income based upon a fixed pricing unit for our product, which is guaranteed to decline in real terms due to inflation. Secondly, a declining income as we are unable to create more product as we don't actually produce it and we have no control over its making. Thirdly, an opportunity for responsibility of the product, ever improving it without further investment. An opportunity to communicate with all our stakeholders as to how we will actually improve the product continually to a national standard. An opportunity to learn how to manage employee reductions and redundancy processes. Finally, an opportunity to lead with no sense of hope or joy as you take our company through closure and no opportunity for redeployment. Clearly, that's not a real job description for a job. However, many of our colleagues are currently going through exactly that process. In recent times, we are witnessing a significant number of colleagues who are experiencing that, and the pressure placed upon our members in these situations is huge. I've seen strong, professional, senior leaders crestfallen, broken, tearful, and demoralised due to the very weight of the decisions that they're having to make. Government strategy and policy seem to be caught sleeping and show no regard for the state of the school system, caused by a funding formula based upon pupil-led factors, which has been lacklustre in dealing with foreseeable decline. The number of schools in the maintained sector with non-sustainable deficit budgets is rapidly increasing. The number of trusts with declining fiscal strength and sustainable structures is rapidly increasing. The system is at risk of watching schools wither on the vine with no strategic objectives.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I can't take Gareth, but Jim put it so well on your behalf together, didn't he?
Support this motion. Thank you, Conference.
Conference. Do I have anyone at the 2-minute mic there? Oh, hello, mic 1. Thank you.
Hi, Jan Hatchell from Suffolk. Really quickly, can I just raise that this funding issue is huge, and that when I was a head teacher of a special school in 2011, the funding was £10,000 per child plus top-up. That hasn't increased. No wonder we're struggling to meet the children with additional needs. Our funding has stayed the same for over 15 years. Thank you. I support the motion.
Thank you. Moving on to mic number 2, please.
Hi, Amanda Barner, East Riding Branch. I am a small school. I was not a small school 8 years ago. 8 years ago, I had double the number of pupils. Nobody moves into the area. Nobody can afford the rent. It's too high. Nobody can afford to have children. I am making decisions every day that are at the detriment of my pupils. We are falling roll. We are therefore falling number of staff. We are not falling number of SEN children. I'm at 20%. I'm well above national average in what should be a lovely, leafy East Riding school. In the image my school gives is not of the children it has within it. I am worried that my school is going to end up closing, and not in the not too distant future. That deficit budget is absolutely soul destroying, despite joining a trust in hope of making things better. I support this motion.
Thank you so much. Now we are voting on both the lead and the lettered, so all those in favour, please raise your hand. And against? Unanimously carried. Thank you. Moving on to motion 19, David Huntingford and Scott Halliwell, please.
David Huntingford, Barking and Dagenham Branch, London, first-time proposer. Thank you very much. Every leader in the room knows the knot in the stomach when something goes seriously wrong with the building. Not the day wear and tear, the blocked drain, the broken chair. I mean the boiler that fails in January, the roof that starts letting in water, the electrics that need replacing before you can let the children back in. You get into school, you pick up the phone, you call out to local authority or your academy trust for help, and you hope that the job is going to be done and funded. Now imagine, once that has happened, you suddenly get a bill for 10% of the cost. That £500,000 for the new roof that is needed £50,000. That new kitchen you desperately need, £30,000. That is the reality for VA schools. We're funded the same way generally, but when it comes to building work, we have to pay the first 10%. And it's even harder than that. Governing bodies cannot use their dissolved formula capital grant to meet that contribution. In practice, it has to come from delegated revenue budget, which for schools in deprived communities means it comes directly out of money that should be paying for teachers, support staff, resources for children, or as many governing bodies are told, they can fundraise, run a ball, sell raffle tickets, find a generous local business. That's all very well in schools in areas of wealth, where a dinner dance at £200 a head will turn a tidy profit. For schools like mine, despite a governor suggesting we could try a bake sale, it's just not going to work. And I want to be clear what this means in practice. My school urgently needed a new kitchen, but I was still in debt for the new roof that I'd needed 2 years before. The diocese didn't have the confidence that I would be able to pay the £30,000 contribution, so the kitchen didn't happen. We were left to manage, we were left to cope. Our children's lunches are still being served in a school corridor with a hot bain-marie there that pupils are able to touch. This is not an exceptional story, it's a structural one. And again, for schools like me, the local authority will not manage the bank account of a VA school, so I have to take out loans to pay for this. I'm getting charged 1% above Bank of England base rates. I am spending tens of thousands of pounds in addition to these contributions in loan repayments. Last year, that meant 2 members of the teaching staff being made redundant, 4 support staff, in a school that has now reached 40% special educational needs and 45% deprivation, a time I should be increasing staff. Now, who actually attends these schools? It's worth saying this clearly because sometimes it can get lost in these debates. VA schools are open to children, families and staff of all faiths and none. They are not selection mechanisms for the devout. Church of England schools alone educate about 1.16 million children according to government data. Catholic schools educate a further 820,000. This is a significant number of pupils and not members necessarily of the founding faith. They are children whose parents chose a school often because it was local, perhaps it had a good reputation, or because of what it's offered. It follows the national curriculum, same SATs, same GCSEs. They deserve the same standard of building as any other child in any other school. I'm not asking that VA schools get special treatment or anything additional, just the same as what local authority schools or schools that are in MATs would get as well. The 10% rule dates back to a very different era of school funding and church-school relations. It made sense in 1944. I don't believe it makes sense now. Conference, I move.
Thank you, David. Scott?
Scott Halliwell, Secretary, Bark and Dagenham Branch, Greater London Region. Second conference, first time speaking. 43 seconds, I'll be as quick as I can. Over the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen significant erosion of school budgets. I won't go into detail. All pupils, parents, carers, staff, school leaders and communities deserve safe, secure, fit-for-purpose school buildings and sites, and we call on the government to provide adequate funding separate from and in addition to schools' core budgets for all schools across our regions and irrespective of their governance structures. Conference, I move.
Thank you, Scott. And I can see we have speakers at mic 2. Do I have one at mic 1 as well? Thank you. I'll take 2, then 1. Thanks.
Right. Thank you. Tim Newbold, Wrexham Branch. I've got a little problem with this motion. My understanding is that the foundations of voluntary aided schools actually own the buildings. Local authorities, government don't actually own the buildings. So when it's spoken about a 10% contribution towards building costs, it needs to be recognised that 90% of that cost is being met by the taxpayer paying for someone else's building. So I find myself in a difficult position here in voting on this. I will probably abstain because I don't have, I haven't consulted the branch. Well, I have consulted the branch. They've expressed no view on this. But I do think a 10% contribution towards the cost of your own building is not unreasonable. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mike 1.
Clem Cody, Cumbria branch. We've got a school in Cumbria that's had to evacuate their school and move into multiple different sites. When they evacuated, they had a balanced budget. They've increased their costs and they've now got a 1.6 million deficit linked explicitly to the evacuation. Now, whilst there is an agreement for a new school and a new building to be put in place, there is still no formal agreement on who is going to pick up the bill for 1.6 million in overspend. That is a disgrace. We fully support this motion, but there needs to be further thinking and there needs to be some real deep thought by the DFE on how these budgets are going to be managed moving forward.
Thank you. David, you have a right to reply.
Is it on? Yep, thank you. Where is that 10% supposed to come from, particularly in deprived areas? We've just heard a perfect example there, 1.6 million. I just gave an example of a new roof and a new kitchen, not in the millions, but in the thousands. If we want C of E schools, Catholic schools, BA schools to survive, then they need to be financially viable. We're not asking for anything extra. We're not asking this money to come directly from local authorities. It's making sure dioceses, Catholic and Church of England, are properly funded so they're able to invest in their schools as well.
Now going to move to the vote. Show of hands, please, for all those in favour. And against. That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to motion 20, Sean Hopper and Vic Logan.
Afternoon conference, Sean Hopper, North Yorkshire Branch Secretary and first time speaking at conference. Woo. I'm here to propose this motion because it addresses something fundamental to effective primary leadership and to children's successful entry into primary education. At its heart, this motion is about three key things. Firstly, strengthening the planning of transition for nursery-age children and their parents. Secondly, enabling leaders to think more strategically and make clear decisions using the evidence they need, financially, in staffing and as part of the wider system. And thirdly, reducing avoidable workload pressures created by duplication and late changes. Under current arrangements in many local authorities, final number of reception class allocations are not confirmed until the middle of April. This is often after leaders have already worked on budget models and staffing plans. That timing creates difficulties not just for schools, but for families as well. Let's begin with transition. Successful transition into reception class is carefully planned, not improvised. It relies on time. Time to build relationships with nurseries and childminders, time to identify children's needs, and time to work with parents, carers and grandparents to make the move into school feel safe, positive and familiar. When allocations are confirmed in mid-April, much of that work is delayed or compressed and can often be hindered by the many other events that take place in schools. Schools cannot plan in depth until they know which children they will be welcoming. Transition programmes become more tentative, less personalised and increasingly shaped by time pressure rather than thoughtful design. Families feel this too. For many parents, carers and sometimes granddads and grandmas, the wait for confirmation is an anxious one. Until allocations are finalised, families are unsure which school their child will attend, who to contact, what arrangements will look like and how best to support their child. Earlier confirmation would remove that doubt. It would allow families to build a relationship with the school sooner, to ask questions, to attend events, and to approach the start of school with confidence rather than uncertainty. That reassurance is not a luxury, it is a vital part of a child's and a parent's readiness for school. This motion is also about strategic leadership informed by evidence. Primary leaders are expected to make forward-looking decisions about finances, staffing structures and organisation across the whole school. Those decisions are rightly scrutinised and must be made responsibly. But strategic decision-making depends on reliable information. Without confirmed reception numbers or knowledge of the children and their families coming into school, leaders are asked to plan on the basis of assumption rather than evidence. That makes careful strategy difficult and increases risk. Earlier confirmation of allocated places would allow leaders to make clear, coherent decisions once, not provisionally, not defensively, but with confidence. It would strengthen financial planning, enable appropriate staffing and organisation, and support schools to be more stable and sustainable within their local system. And thirdly, this motion is about workload. Late confirmation drives duplication. Leaders are forced to remodel budgets multiple times, plan staffing more than once, and revisit decisions that should only need to be made a single time. This repeated work does not add value, it simply adds pressure. In a system where workload and well-being are critical concerns, we should be challenging processes that create unnecessary work through avoidable delay. Requiring local authorities to confirm reception allocations in the first half of the spring term would reduce uncertainty, eliminate duplication, enable a well-planned transition for children, and replace reactive adjustment with thoughtful preparation. For those reasons, Conference, I move.
Thank you, Sean. Vic, please, to second, and then I've got an indicated speaker, Judy Stanyard.
Conference, this is a cost-free motion. It asks only for a change in timings so that primary leaders can plan more effectively to do three things. Number one, they can budget for a known number of reception children for their entry into reception class, their first step into school. They can, secondly, structure staffing to be effective to support that first step through the door into school. And thirdly, and probably the most importantly, they're able to guide families in supporting their children to take a steady step in a calm manner as they hand over their child to begin their lifelong journey of education. I formally second this motion.
Thank you, Vic. And Judy, please. Thank you. And now going to mic 2, please.
Graham Frost, Cumbria Branch. On behalf of members in Cumbria, just to say that we're facing a situation where we're not getting the information that we need to set budgets in time at the same time as being lent on by local authority to have all our budgetary information decided. So yes, allocations are very important, but there are other things where we should be holding local authorities to account, making sure that they are as efficient as they are expecting schools to be. So support this motion very strongly.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? No, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour, please. And against? Unanimously carried. Thank you. Now moving on to motion 21, Karina Hansen to propose, Sam Williams to second, and then I've got indicated speakers. Definitely Judy this time round. Sorry, Judy. We thought you were on both of them. And George Samios.
Thank you. Last time I'm up today, promise. Conference. We bring this motion because what happens in the earliest years of a child's life shapes everything that follows. The research is clear. If you went to our Fringe event earlier, It was excellent. High quality early years education provision is not a nice to have, it's the single greatest lever we have for improving children's long-term educational, social and life outcomes. And yet we're systematically underfunding it. We are under-resourcing it and piling expectation upon expectation onto a sector that is already carrying more than it can bear. Let's be honest about what's happening in early years settings right now. Across all three nations, practitioners are telling us the same story. The complexity of children's developmental, social, emotional and communication needs has increased significantly. More children arriving in settings needing specialist input, multi-agency support and skilled, informed responses from day one. But the systems around early years have not adapted to that reality. Support is often unlocked only once the child reaches crisis. And too often, the support the child receives is dependent on where they live, the local system that they're born into, or the type of setting that they go to, creating inconsistency and inequality at the very point where families need fairness matters most. At the same time, the workforce to meet these rising needs is simply not there. Recruitment and retention are persistent challenges. Settings are struggling to maintain capacity and skilled practitioners are leaving the profession, a profession they care deeply about but can no longer sustain. Across all nations, early years professionals are expected to do more, identify needs earlier and to work across agencies to respond to complex developmental profiles. And yet there is no coherent plan to address workload, progression, recruitment and retention. This is not a short-term pressure, it's a structural issue. We recognise that governments have not been entirely idle in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, but across all three nations, rising complexity, workforce shortages and funding pressures remain unresolved. And we must be clear about what these developments do and do not do. Emerging policy reforms, including the White Paper in England and equivalent strategies in Wales and Northern Ireland, place increasing expectations on early years settings without sustainable, equitable, needs-led funding. Much of the funding available focuses on childcare, not meeting the rise of developmental complexity. And where support is provided, it's often setting-wide, not genuinely preventative or responsive to individual needs. And beneath this lies a fundamental flaw. Our funding models remain largely deficit-based and reactive. Needs are often identified early by early years practitioners and schools, but they are not being funded properly. Without formal diagnosis, the funding does not go with the child. So, what are we calling for? We're calling for a funding formula that reflects real and rising complexity of children's needs, moving away from diagnostic thresholds and deficit-based models. We're calling for needs-led preventative funding so practitioners can act early with the right support at the right time. And we're calling for a coherent, fully costed investment that matches every national policy commitment made in this sector. We truly believe that early intervention, we must have that. We must fund it early, we must staff it properly, and we must design systems that allow practitioners to act, not wait. Because every delay at this stage is a cost we all carry for years to come, for that child, for the family, and for society as a whole. Conference, I ask you to support this motion.
Thank you, Karina. Sam, please.
Sinead talked about living and leading in a paradoxical society. Don't we know it? Investment in the early years is the highest it's ever been, yet in nursery chains backed by private equity, public money is taken away from children in the form of profit. The expansion of the entitlement increased the role of the state in early education, yet it is framed as childcare, not education, and excludes, by design, many children from under-resourced communities, those very children who would benefit the most. The long-term success of SEND reform lie in early childhood, yet many settings in the earliest sector are struggling to survive. And maintain nursery schools, beacons of inclusive practice, continue to close every year. Conference, I second this motion.
Thank you. I'm going to go to mic 2 for Judy, then straight to mic 1 for George, please.
Hello, Conference. Conference. My name is Judy Stanyard and I'm the Stockton Branch Secretary. It's my second time at conference and first time as a speaker. Like most people here, my school has noticed year on year an alarming increase in the number of pupils arriving with very significant complex SEND needs. We're pretty good at reacting to this and always trying to be inclusive. We meet needs as best we can and we ensure, wherever possible, the greatest educational experience for our pupils that we can. And that's because, like most people here, I joined the teaching profession determined to do the best that I could for all the children who came into my care. Today, I rarely feel I'm able to do this. At a minimum, schools need sufficient funding to support our youngest pupils. Schools welcoming pupils like mine from the age of 2 cannot always wait for specialist resources and for the support that they need. We cannot have delays for these children of months or even years so that they miss all of their early years education. We need national policy which supports greater links between agencies, especially health visitors, who, although have massive workloads, do need to complete a much more robust screening check. And this must take place face-to-face, not over the telephone. Only with necessary funding and improved national policy will our most vulnerable pupils receive the best education and enjoy their experience of early years. Conference, Stockton Branch support this motion.
Thanks very much, Judy. And we'll go to George, please.
Hello, Conference. I'm George Samios. That's S-A-M-I-O-S. It's a Greek surname. I'm from Bath, North East Somerset branch, and I'm a member of the Early Years Council. Conference, I do rise strongly in support of this motion. Need, as you've heard, is rising and it's complex. Support systems are threadbare and early years staff are stretched to new levels and many of them are considering their employment options. Health visiting services, once a cornerstone of early identification, is near crisis point. The number of health visitors has halved in the last 10 years. Some health visitors now have a caseload of 1,000 children, which means that emerging needs are being missed at a crucial stage. At the same time, there is a critical shortage of speech and language therapists, which is a profession close to my heart as a person who lives with a stammer, and waiting lists for children. Tens of thousands of children are growing at the point that they most need intervention. This leaves the early years practitioners holding risk without the resources, expertise, or funding they need. It is unfair on staff, it's unsustainable for settings, and it is deeply damaging for children. Conference, with the proportion of children who are actually ready to start school falling, if the government is really serious about improving outcomes with 75% of children to get a good level of development after their first year in school, if they are serious, then they really need to fund children's early years properly and fully so the right support is in place before children start school. Otherwise, this heaps even more pressure on schools. And there is a real risk that more excellent early years practitioners and teachers will continue to leave, and this has already happened in our branch. So choose hope, lead with joy, and invest early for success. Let's plant some oak trees. Let's plant a forest.
Thanks, George. Moving on to mic 2 now.
Hi, I'm Jo O'Rourke from Stockport branch. I'm now a Life member. I support this motion. When the early years single funding formula was introduced in 2011, we were told by Stockport's local authority accountant at the time, if we kept 2/3 full, we could still offer all the support we had done to our children. We still had a small amount of capacity at that time to be flexible with our experienced staff and to be able to respond to children's needs. Early years funding and any top-up inclusion funding, despite welcome increases, has not kept pace at all with costs and children's needs have grown. Early years funding formulas and very delayed top-up funding does not work for our children. Being a head teacher of a maintained nursery school for 20 years, I saw our budgets getting tighter every year, which meant we had to do 2 restructures and lose experienced staff, and our capacity to meet the needs of our children reduced. I'm now semi-retired and support a range of nurseries and schools. I visited a fantastic inclusive nursery last week with a reputation for doing really good jobs supporting children with special needs. They are recommended to families by parents and other professionals, but they can only afford to work to ratio now and have very limited extra capacity to meet complex need. In September, in one room, typically with 16 2-year-olds, 5 children started with EHCPs and 2 more with this level of need. By December, 2 experienced and very talented staff had left the nursery, exhausted and feeling that they could not meet the children's needs anymore. Early years funding formulas, it's well overdue. They must be urgently reviewed so all settings can have the capacity to support our children.
Thank you. Do I have any more speakers at the mic? No. We will go to a vote. Colleagues, please vote put your hands up if you are in agreement with this. And against. Unanimously carried. Thank you. Moving on to motion 23. James Hawkins proposing and Mel Collins seconding. Thank you.
Let's get this party started, conference. So, conference today, I present this motion because it speaks to a deeply worrying misreading of school leadership at the heart of current government thinking. DfE suggests we have some room to derive better value from spending, and we should be reconsidering leadership team structures, citing a 45% increase in assistant head teacher posts since 2011. Catch yourself on, DfE. Catch yourself on. What the DfE presents as excess instead shines a welcome light on a capacity created in response to escalating need, challenges in retention and chronic underfunding. Over the same period, our schools have faced sustained growth in pupil need, particularly SEND and safeguarding, rising teacher workload and DfE initiatives, below inflation pay and chronic underfunding and investment in our children, and an accountability system that, as we sadly know, remains life-threatening. NAHT's most recent wellbeing survey shows that only 1 in 5 senior leaders now aspire to headship. That is not a pipeline brimming with surplus leadership. That is a recruitment warning light flashing red. Stripping away assistant head teacher capacity will not improve value for money, but it will further accelerate burnout and turnover. Conference assistant head teachers are not an optional extra. They are shock absorbers of the system. They're the glue that holds together behaviour and attendance and pastoral systems, and are a crucial part of a team that provide essential social services that are chronically underfunded and our communities desperately need. Comrades, this government has highlighted AHTs as collateral damage, expendable in the battle for school efficiency. I'm here to defend and celebrate AHTs, a key role necessarily to build leaders of the future. I mean, conference, the letters AHT even make up 3/4 of our union's logo. So here's some alternative data to consider. Also since 2011, academy CEOs and executive leader roles in England have increased exponentially by 2,400%. Back office and central teams in some multi-academy trusts cost millions of pounds and are on occasion far less effective than any AHTs I know. How about we reconsider leadership structures where CEOs and Academy Central teams consume and mismanage funding destined for our pupils and strip head teachers of the autonomy to deliver the best for their schools? If we are serious about retention, about leadership aspiration, and about giving every child the education they deserve, then we must be clear. Assistant head teachers are not surplus. They are the future. Finally, Dear V, a reminder that AHTs are also people, not expendable, not a cost saver, but strong leaders doing an amazing job in very difficult circumstances, exacerbated by years of underinvestment. Conference, I move.
Thank you, James. Mel.
Good afternoon, I'm Mel Collins, Coventry Branch and National Executive. I knew I should have worn my high heels. Anyway, colleagues, I'm proud to second this motion. The suggestion from the Department of Education that schools can simply drive better value by trimming leadership teams is not only misguided, it is fundamentally disconnected from the lived reality of our schools. Pointing to a rise in assistant head teacher posts as if it were evidence of inefficiency ignores the truth. We all know. These roles have grown because the demands on schools have grown. Assistant head teachers are not an optional extra. They are the people who hold together the increasingly complex work of safeguarding curriculum leadership, behaviour, inclusion and staff development. They are the reason many head teachers and deputies can remain in the profession at all. Remove that capacity and you don't save money, you increase workload, accelerate burnout and compromise the quality of education our pupils receive. This conference must send a clear message: strong leadership teams are not a luxury, they are the backbone of effective schools. I second this motion.
Thank you. Thank you. I can see we have somebody at mic number 2.
Good afternoon, Alistair Black, Coventry Branch. Still struggling with the voice. I strongly believe in the importance of assistant head teachers. They're a vital part of our leadership team. And more importantly, when we have all retired, they will be on the conveyor belt to replace us. Personally, my assistant head teachers are invaluable. And aside, you probably don't know, Mel is my deputy. She's brilliant. But without our assistant head teachers, we both could not be at conference today. So I'm fully in favour of the motion. Please back it.
Thank you, Alistair. And the next one, Jim, are you talking to this?
Jim Nicholson, Stockport Branch. I'm really angry, actually. I'm fed up. Tony Blair said, about 20 years ago, education, 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 and we've had such little investment for so many years. Many schools can't afford assistant heads. I mean, we will actually support this wholeheartedly, but the reality is leadership is being cut. In our area of Stockport, in the last 3 years, we've seen a decline in the DSG of 18 million in its cumulative budget. 18 million. Our schools are on their knees already. We've got decline in terms of leadership capacity. This is an essential element of what we're trying to achieve, but it is a broader issue, a much broader issue. We should be walking on the streets of London like we did in 2017-18 once again, because this needs to be addressed wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to mic number 3 and then come back to mic number 2.
Thank you, Conference. Grant Strudley, Bracknell Forest Branch and South Central Regional Treasurer. I just want to mention a couple of names. Martin, Alex, Sophie, Claire, James, Adam. I've been a head teacher for nearly 13 years, and all of those people were assistant heads who I've had the privilege of working with. They have led school improvement, they have led pastoral systems, they have supported me in the work that I've done, and of course made a massive difference to the children that we served. 3 of them have gone on to headship. 2 of them have gone on to deputy headship. Our assistant heads are not only doing heavy lifting now to improve our schools and improve standards and to make life better for our children. They are also the future leaders. I support the motion.
Thank you so much. Mic number 2, please.
Sue Street, South Central. Sorry, we seem to be up a lot. I have once again left the Ferrari because I too am incensed with how our junior senior leaders are seen and treated. I gave my first address at conference as a deputy head because I was never going to be a head teacher. I loved supporting my head. Likewise, there are many assistant heads that love supporting their head and being deputies for the deputy heads. There is a reason this ecosystem has thrived and survived for hundreds of years, in actual fact, in many different educational systems. They're called different things, but they are still there. Harking back to a couple of the other motions earlier today and yesterday, including one on apprenticeships, which may still be coming, the fact is that AHTs, as a role, are where leaders for headship and deputy headship learn the operational realities of the school if they are given proper roles. And it is that proper role boundary which is important at each stage. Deputies merge higher operational with learning the strategic if they are given that apprenticeship role, model, structure, diet. And that is what I feel the department must understand. It's not about cutting, and it's certainly not about cutting assistant headship roles if you're not in academy school. Good grief, I don't think anyone would leave the school in under 14, 15, 16 hours a day if we didn't have great assistant heads. It is a position to be valued and retained, and we must fight for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have one more speaker at mic 1?
Hi, Graham. I'm from the Bristol branch. I'm the president there. First time speaking at conference. I am in support of the motion, but one thing that I do want to raise is I've got an issue with people constantly criticising people, leaders in maths. I think that some of those people are here today, and I think that we need to be really careful, because if we are divided, that's when we are going to get ruled. And so I think that actually a lot of our maths leaders are very ethical, very responsible, and will actually try and make sure that the money goes straight to the children.
Thank you. I can't see any more speakers, so we'll go to the vote. Please vote now if you are in agreement. And against. Unanimously carried. Thank you. We are going to move on to motion 24 now. There is a lead and lettered motion, so I'd like to invite Clem Cody, the proposer, Graham Frost as a seconder, up on the stage, please. Then Rebecca Penn and Karina Hansen. You'll be at the 2-minute mics, and you'll only have 2 minutes between you. Thanks.
Thank you. Chair, colleagues, and to the parents and members of the press watching online today, I want to start with a really simple question for you all. Is it right that a head teacher can be paid less than a classroom teacher in a neighbouring school? It sounds a bit like an administrative glitch or an anomaly, but under our current broken system, it is the reality. It is the inevitable outcome of a structure that has lost its way. We aren't here today because we want special treatment. We're here because we care about the sustainability of our schools. And we all know the reality of the school day. It's not just teaching or managing. It is safeguarding. It's multi-agency collaboration. It's managing budgets running in the millions. It's site management. It's legal accountability. But most importantly, it's supporting the families and holding the emotional fabric of a community together. Often, while being the only person in the building qualified to make that final high-stakes accountability decision. We are the architects of our school culture, yet we're currently being paid by a map that was drawn up in the 1980s. We're still paying head teachers based on the number of pupils in their school, but we're working not based on the pupil numbers, but based on the depth of our responsibility. And we need to be honest about this group size myth that prioritises the larger schools where leadership can and is distributed, where they can have bursars, estate managers, teams of senior leaders, accountants, so on and so forth. But look at our small schools. The head teacher there is the CEO, the HR director, the site manager, the accountant, the safeguarding lead, and often the classroom teacher, all at the same time. They wear every single hat. That's what we call operational intensity. School leadership is a 21st century challenge, but it's been managed with a pay scale that hasn't evolved in decades. And the model stops our deputy and assistant heads from stepping up. And why would they trade their current role for a headship that offers exponential risk, but a pay structure that feels like a ceiling? And this is where the parents amongst you in the room and watching online really need to listen. When we talk about leadership pay, we're not talking about more for us. We're talking about the stability of your child's education. When the system fails to recognise the complexity of our role, we see a revolving door of leadership. We've heard lots about that over the week. We see schools losing their leaders and their visionaries to other sectors and to burnout. And every time a head teacher leaves because the role is unsustainable, it's the children who lose out. It's the parents who lose the leader who knew their family. It's the community that loses its anchor. And if we want the best leaders to stay for the long haul, we have to stop treating their salary like a relic of the 20th century. And this is why this motion is vital. We don't need tweaks. We call for root and branch reform that must deliver three things. First, a professional pay continuum. We must move away from the arbitrary pupil count and towards a model that recognises operational intensity. Second, statutory pay portability. We want the leaders to be able to move where they want and where they're needed. Third, restoration of the leadership differential. We're not asking for the world. We're asking for a system that reflects the reality. We're asking for a system that values the expertise required to guide a school in 2026. So colleagues and parents, the choice is ours. We can continue to accept a pay system that is outdated, or we can choose to fix it. We need a leadership system that prioritises stability in our school. Our children deserve leaders who can stay for the long haul, not a system designed for an era that has long since passed. Let's choose a future where school leadership is sustainable, respected, and fit for the 21st century. Please support this motion. I move.
Thank you, Clem. Graham.
Colleagues, pay structures should not be a detriment to recruitment. And having served both in a small school and a large school, I can testify to the complexities in both settings. And I know that many of you can do the same. We need to make sure that pay reflects the complexity of the job and isn't a detriment to recruitment for particular school communities. So please support this motion. I second.
Thank you, Graham. And then we're going to move to Rebecca and Karina, please.
Across Wales, we have seen a rapid rise in executive headships, collaborations and federations. At their best, these models can be a force for good, improving leadership capacity, protecting schools and serving communities well. Conference, this motion recognises that. But what we are seeing on the ground tells a more troubling story. In some local authorities, these arrangements have increasingly been used as a response to financial pressure and recruitment difficulty rather than as a carefully planned educational strategy. Schools that are not in crisis are being pulled into federations to stabilise others, with the expectation that the leadership capacity can simply be stretched thinner and thinner without consequence. In several of these collaborations, a single executive head is now responsible for 2 or 3 schools across different sites. While the executive structure may sit at the top, the practical burden is very often pushed downwards. Deputy and assistant heads are asked to step up to de facto heads of school, managing day-to-day operations, safeguarding parental engagement and staff performance, sometimes across multiple schools and campuses, without any formal recognition in pay or title. We have seen in Wales examples where federations have flattened leadership structures altogether. Assistant and deputy headship posts have been removed or left unfilled to deliver efficiency savings, leaving remaining leaders carrying broader remits with no additional support. These colleagues are told that this will be good experience for future headship, yet there is no clear pathway, no job security, and no pay framework to match the responsibility. Conference, this is not collaboration, it is extraction. And crucially, there is little evidence being collected on the impact of this way of working. We do not know how many talented leaders in Wales have chosen not to apply for headship because they have seen what federation and executive leadership really looks like. We do not know how many have already left the profession. What we do know is that the school teachers' paying conditions document doesn't reflect the reality and needs to be reviewed. If we believe in collaboration, we must also believe in protecting those that make it work.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we've run out of time to hear Karina, but we do have some indicated speakers, Lee Willis-Croft-Ferris and Tracy Wilson, please.
Lee Willis-Croft-Ferris, Northumberland branch. Won't surprise you that I want to talk about this. So my school is the most remote school in England officially. It's both isolated and isolating. I am the head teacher, the SENCO, the DSL, the EV, SMH, early years, literacy, numeracy, pupil premium attendance lead. For over a year, I was the school cook as well. And what I learned about that was two things. First of all, I make a truly outstanding panini, apparently. But secondly, that the book ultimately, for everything, stops with me and me alone. That's not a sob story. I genuinely love my school, love my job, but it's also not a competition. I don't believe that any head teacher has a monopoly on complexity in their role. And I believe that all head teachers operate in incredibly intense environments, regardless of the size of their school. Now, I accept that heads of larger schools face challenges that I don't, and I expect those heads to also accept that I face challenges that they don't face. We're all pushed and pulled in multiple directions every single day, and those directions might differ significantly depending on the size of your school. But if we accept that all head teachers are working tirelessly under increasingly difficult conditions, then surely we need a pay system that is fair and equitable. Small school head teachers and very small school head teachers do not expect or need sympathy necessarily, but neither do expect to be paid less than some middle leaders in secondary. And I would just end by saying, because we've had very little controversy at this conference, we've had no card votes, which is very disappointing. So I would just end and just inject a little bit of spice by saying to the two colleagues who I overheard earlier making a borderline snarky comment about very small schools, I would just say, maybe just humbly suggest that you reaffirm your professional solidarity, or as we say in the Northeast, just give your head a wobble and vote in favour of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Tracy?
Might have to stand on my tiptoes, I think, here. Oh, thank you. Oh, that's better. Tracy Wilson from Durham branch. In County Durham, we have many small schools, with an increasing number of head teachers being asked to take on additional schools, myself included. On paper, my pay is determined by pupil numbers, but my job is determined by complexity. Being the head teacher of two schools means two school budgets, two improvement plans, two self-evaluation, two pupil premium reports, blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah, and yes, the constant readiness for two separate Ofsted inspections. Yet the system still asks, how many pupils? That question belongs to a different era. We talk about a recruitment and retention crisis, but this isn't abstract. It's about talented leaders looking at roles like mine and questioning the cost both professionally and personally. Our children need stability. Our communities need continuity. But we will not get that if leadership roles continue to expand why the pay structure stands still. This motion is not about more pay for the sake of it. It's about fair pay. It's about recognising operational intensity, not just headcount. It's about enabling leaders to move between schools without penalty. And it's about restoring a leadership differential that reflects the weight of accountability we carry. I support this motion.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm now going to go to mic number 2, please, Julie.
Julie Kelly, Hampshire Branch, and Chair of the National Association of Small Schools. A few people knew I'd be coming up for this one. So one of the things I would just say is that a lot of leaders in small schools as well would not be pushing their governors for a pay rise because they're so worried about their budget. I was given the confidence after working with the union for so long to be able to negotiate my pay so that I was paid in accordance with what I was doing, but I know a lot of small schools don't. That gave the stability to my school because I then stayed, and they did that to keep me on. And my local school, they had about 6 heads at the time. I was in my own school for 13 years. I fully support this motion.
Thank you, Julie. I don't see any other speakers, so we are voting on both the lead and the lettered motions. So all those in agreement, please raise your hand. And against? Unanimously carried. Thank you. I'd now like to invite up Rachel Younger as the proposer and Jackie Bartlett as the seconder on emergency motion number 2.
Conference. This motion speaks to the funding for training and development of school business and operational leaders who are critical to the smooth functioning of our schools and trusts. These professionals do not have access to funded CPD in the same way as other leadership colleagues. Over the last 2 decades, the scope and complexity of SBL roles have grown as business professionals have taken on greater responsibility over an ever-broadening range of areas, but the training and development infrastructure hasn't kept pace. Funded apprenticeships have provided the key, affordable and structured way for schools to provide certificated professional development for SBLs and, importantly, those aspiring to be the next generation of SBLs. Many schools have relied on these funded qualifications as a mechanism to compete to retain skilled staff against the pull of other sectors. Yet government has just announced that it intends to defund 16 apprenticeship standards, notably leadership and management standards such as the Chartered Management Degree Apprenticeship, which I know many SBL colleagues and their schools have benefited from. Government also plans to reduce the levy fund expiry from 24 months to 12 months. This means that it will be significantly harder for schools to plan and accumulate funding for meaningful leadership development, and it will increase the risk that levy contributions will simply expire unused. Additionally, there are plans to increase employer co-investment for non-levy employers from 5% to 25%. This means that some schools, typically primary voluntary aided schools and single academy trusts, face significantly increased costs, turning previously viable apprenticeship development routes into an unaffordable extra. We all know this comes at a time when almost all schools face severe and ongoing budget pressures. Colleagues, the fear is that meaningful certificated CPD for school business leaders will simply disappear. While there are alternative training and development routes, for most schools these are either too expensive, not designed for SBLs, or simply not accessible. Not only does the defunding of these routes send entirely the wrong signal about the value of business leadership in schools, it risks exacerbating the existing recruitment and retention crisis. Government speaks many warm words about the value of school business leaders, but it needs to ensure that its actions match up to these words. Conference, I move.
Thank you, Rachel. Jackie?
Colleagues, I second this motion.
Thank you, Jackie. And I can see we've got somebody stand at mic 2.
Hi, I'm Amanda Goldthorpe-Hall and I'm from Surrey. This is my first time at the conference and first time speaking. Thank you. I'm motivated to support this motion, not just because I was encouraged to do so in the pub last night, but because I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the opportunity presented by the apprenticeship levy. Children dream of being many things: princess, astronaut, pop star. I venture to suggest a few people dream of being a premises manager, a finance officer, or in my case, a school business leader. It took me a few years to find my way to this career, and if I hadn't been able to back up my practical experience with an apprenticeship levy-funded MBA and Level 7 senior leadership qualification, I would not be standing here today as the business leader of a large multi-site SEND secondary school, which has, incidentally, 3 fully inclusive satellite centres, or should I say, specialist inclusion bases, that I'm increasingly being invited to talk about as my MBA findings concerned the strategic intentional system design required to create the environment in which inclusion can flourish and sustain. And yet, at the beginning of this year, the government blocked access to apprenticeship levy funding for anyone over the age of 21 to undertake Level 7 qualifications. Further restrictions on levy funding can only hurt our support staff workforce. I've got 2 premises apprentices on my staff. I'm succession planning with another member of staff doing an SBM apprenticeship. And I encourage all our support staff to upskill, to invest in them so they invest in us. Because let's face it, they could all go and work at Tesco's for far more money and a lot less hassle. Removing apprenticeship levy access for more courses and levels is particularly counterintuitive in the education sector. I support this motion.
Thank you so much. Conference, please show your hands if you agree with this motion. Disagree? Unanimously carried. Thank you. I would now like to invite up for emergency motion number 3, Marika Miles as proposer and Amanda Hume as seconder. Thank you.
Marika Miles, Professional Committee, National Executive. President Conference, I do apologise for encroaching on your time with the GHDs and the nose hair trimmers prior to this evening's festivities with this unplanned motion. Do you not do that? However, I do not apologise for highlighting an ever more pressing, serious and pervasive challenge for school leaders, nor for offering the opportunity for you to mandate a mitigation for this via the National Executive today. I'm now going to share the utterly brilliant concluding paragraph I had planned because I'm so determined to beat the bell or to be able to come to a dead stop if needed. Colleagues, I cannot emphasise enough that this is a highly technical and complex area of legislation, the detail of which very few of us as school leaders will have internalised, and we shouldn't need to. But we do need the tools to ensure that no child or adult in our communities is put at risk by inappropriate or improperly constituted clinical delegation, and that no leader should ever have their well-being, values, or professional confidence undermined by being placed in an invidious position over shortcomings in health services. In the ongoing absence of definitive guidance from the government, this motion asks our union to provide much-needed support and reassurance by publishing a document which enables and empowers leaders in this ongoing tussle. And it asks for this to be provided in time for the new academic year, subject to any unexpected updates from the DFE or the DHSE. We have an excellent cross-union joint position statement on delivering healthcare to school pupils with medical conditions, and our amazing policy team are working relentlessly to lobby on this front. Nevertheless, I doubt there'll be many of you in the room who will lack either lived experience of or imagination for the kinds of scenarios which we're experiencing with increasing frequency. Scenarios where school leaders are emotionally blackmailed and browbeaten by other agencies or agents trying to coerce them into filling gaps in clinical commissioning and resourcing. This generally takes the form of conflating training with clinical delegation and/or by the gross overinterpretation of the duties outlined in both supporting pupils with medical conditions and the EHRC technical guidance for schools. I've had the privilege of meeting more members than ever in 2026, travelling the country with our roadshows, and I've been struck by the extent of the anxiety and distress this is causing and the threat to relationships with parents and carers it represents and the scale of the issue. I have truly appalling stories that I've heard, appalling by the complexity and invasive nature of the procedures being undertaken or expected, appalling by the risks being carried by school leaders and governors and often directly shouldered by the lowest paid staff, with ambiguous, if not downright precarious, insurance and indemnity arrangements. Appalling by the aggressive, shaming and technically and legally unsound approach from some other professionals. And above all, appalling by the second-rate healthcare system being vicariously created in our schools that our children and their families are forced to accept in place of the expert clinical care that the NHS Constitution entitles them to. Kind of ironic against the backdrop of a white paper which speaks so enthusiastically about children's rights and yet makes not one single mention of this. Education and health services must work together to enable these rights, and this is severely hobbled in the absence of guidance which enables all parties, quite literally, to be on the same page. I want to thank our sister union, Unison, who have worked in particularly close partnership with our policy team to call out the persistent and casual assertion across various contexts and departments that schools must or should carry out clinical tasks as a matter of course. This is totally unsupported by a plethora of health legislation and guidance around clinical delegation. It's simply not good enough that the recent consultation on guidance for supporting pupils with medical conditions and allergies once again completely fails to address this issue, despite repeated assurance by the DfE that this is on the to-do list. All of this totally fails the good enough for my child test and therefore has no place in any of our settings. Right, you had the good bit already. Colleagues, I move.
Thanks so much, Marika. And over to Amanda.
Formally second.
Thank you, Amanda. And moving out to delegates to vote. Sorry, do we have someone at the mic? Mic 1 and mic 3.
Good afternoon, conference. Sławek Nowakiewicz, and I'm co-secretary in Somerset branch. I'm feeling very passionate about this topic. I work in special education for over 30 years, and in 2021, I took over a school which is PMLD and SLD, designated with high level of medical needs. As I was new to that school, I started questioning quite a lot of practices and had various meetings with ICB and NHS professionals, and I faced quite a lot of obstacles on that journey. Education does not have legal base to be delegated clinical tasks, and we always need to remember that. That challenge isn't easy, but also that challenge starts from the elements of EHCPs. If we look at the challenges which a number of our schools are experiencing with challenging Section G and Section F, the various elements of Section G are in element of Section F, and therefore from the start, it is unlawful practice, putting emphasis on those clinical tasks to be delivered by our staff who is not clinically trained. Also, things which I'm raising, and I would like the conference to bear in mind, it's the quality assurance elements of the training provided by medical professionals. Often enough, experience of our schools is that they will appear on one occasion, deliver the training, and expect our staff to deliver high-quality provision and high-quality care without medical training. I also wanted to add the liability insurance, which is again raised by myself on numerous occasions with the local authority, as current liability insurance, which my local authority is holding, does not cover my staff in event of making errors. Those are really substantial issues and put us as school leaders in a very compromising position because accountability in those situations will be sitting with us. I urge the conference to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And mic 3.
Thank you.
Johnny Gray, Northern Ireland. I'm a special school leader myself, and I certainly can echo everything that my comrade over here has said. But it's a simple story I want to tell you. On the 27th of March 2026, our very wise Education Minister confirmed that our summer schemes that happened in special schools depended on the provision of nursing support in each setting. So therefore, a child cannot come into a summer scheme without a nurse, and yet throughout the rest of the year, those same schools operate without guaranteed nursing provision. School leaders are left to make complex medical decisions in the best interests of children, often without the clinical support that would make those decisions safe, consistent and fair, as was just stated, and are then left to carry the risk when things go wrong. The gap has been consistently overlooked by the Education Authority, the Department of Education and successive minister for nigh on 22 years that I've been a special school principal, and my comrade Colm, who cannot be here in Northern Ireland due to him leaving us far too early, would agree with that, and he was in it for a lot longer than me. But when it comes to the summer schemes, suddenly nursing provision is not optional, it is deemed essential. The question is simple. Why is safety a requirement in July for the summer scheme, but a risk to be managed in term time? Thank you. I support this motion.
Thank you, Johnny. Can't see anybody else at the mic, so we are going to go to vote. All those in favour, please raise their hands. And against? Excellent. Unanimously carried. Thank you so much. It is a great pleasure that I welcome the last motion, 25. And it's going to be a good one, I've been told. Amy Lassman is a proposer and James Hawkins is the seconder. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Amy Lassman, Birmingham. Conference, we need to talk about pay again. This is an issue that demands clarity, courage and resolve from this union. For more than a decade, teachers and leaders have endured sustained real terms pay cuts. Not a single year, not a short-term squeeze, but a long grinding erosion of pay that has left our profession undervalued, overstretched, and struggling to recruit and retain the staff our schools desperately need. And now we are facing the prospect of a 3-year pay deal that sits below inflation. Conference, let's call that what it is. Another real terms pay cut, locked in, normalised, and dressed up as stability. Below inflation pay awards do more than hit bank balances. They send a message that professionalism can be discounted, that workload can keep rising while living standards fall, and that people entrusted with educating the next generation should simply absorb the cost. This motion is clear. Any multi-year below-inflation pay deal is unacceptable. When pay deals are stitched up behind closed doors, when they're presented as the only option, and when unions hesitate to escalate, our members pay the price. A meaningful negotiation does not happen because we are reasonable. It happens because we are powerful. And power comes from organisation, preparation, and the credible threat of industrial action. This motion calls for responsible and strong leadership. It calls for early preparation, for democratic engagement, and for asking members directly whether they are prepared to take action to defend their pay. An indicative ballot is not escalation for its own sake. It's about clarity. It's about giving members a voice and giving this union the mandate it needs to act decisively if government continues down this path of pay restraint. Now, the good news is that industrial action works. In 2023, the mere threat of industrial action by the NAHT, jointly with the NEU colleagues, won us all the highest pay award in 30 years and £900 million of extra funding. And conference, let us be clear on one further point. Pay rises must be fully funded. We will not accept improvements in name only, paid for through cuts elsewhere. Fair pay and properly funded schools go hand in hand. This motion sends a strong message to our members, to government, and to our comrades in sister trade unions and to employers that NAHT will not sleepwalk into another cut. Conference, if we want better pay, we must be prepared to fight for it. If we want respect, we must demand it. If we want to be seen as leaders, then we must lead. I urge you to support motion 25. Conference, I move.
Conference, for over a decade, we've watched real terms pay fall while expectations rise. We've lost brilliant ECTs to supermarkets because they can't pay the rent. We've seen experienced teachers burn out because they're doing it for the kids doesn't cover the mortgage. Now we're offered 3 more years of pay cuts dressed up as a deal. Below inflation means below dignity. It means we keep recruiting in a crisis. We keep covering classes, keep watching standards and opportunities slip because we cannot run world-class schools on goodwill and food bank vouchers. Conference, you don't get retention without reasonable remuneration. You don't get workload down without staff in the building. And you don't get pay and funding up unless we fight for it. For those members concerned about pupils losing days of learning, last year our junior doctor colleagues took several days out and nobody died, literally. Our collective union powers are a formidable force for good, and we should use it. This motion says it all. No to 3-year real-term pay cuts. Yes to fighting for fairer pay. Yes to industrial action. Yes to making government make a choice. Invest in education or explain why you won't. Comrades, start the fire in your bellies, build the momentum in your branches, and let's fight for fairer pay because you are worth it. At us now.
James, you need to come up more often. I think your bobble's at the back there, mate. All right, can we go...
I can't go out tonight without my bobble.
Can we go to mic 3 and then mic 2 and then mic 1, please?
If he was properly paid, he would be getting a second bobble for that routine. Well done, James, well done. I just want to say never, ever, ever let them walk all over us. Never say never, because we went out on strike in Northern Ireland. We had a wonderful day bringing our hand-delivered census returns to the Department of Education. Oh, that was good. And don't ever let them say no. We went out, we did it, we took a chance, and we got our pay. So get it done and get it done now.
Thank you. Number 2.
Mike Rayleigh, Birmingham branch. As I said earlier, I'm quite new to being an assistant head teacher. So I've only recently come to the NAHT. I was in NEU before, because I think it's important to be in the union that represents you and your workforce. I think why it's really important for the NAHT to get behind this is because when the NEU went on strike, we were the only union at the time that did, and it felt quite isolating that the other unions weren't joining in on the strike as well. And I think as leaders, it shows solidarity with our whole workforce that we're striking for their pay as well as our own. So I think that's why it's important for the NAHT to get behind this.
And mic number 1.
Ed Seeley, Nottinghamshire branch. Dave said in his speech, the comparisons to Finland, we need to be valued. We are constantly being asked to do more and more and more, and in real terms we are being paid less and less and less. 9 to 13% reduction since 2010 in our pay in real terms, and they want to reduce it further. We have to make a stand on this, and we have to approve this motion, and we have to take action.
Thank you. And then back to mic number 3, please.
Thank you. Max Kelly, North West Region, Isle of Man branch. Conference. In recent times, the Isle of Man has had to take industrial action ourselves over issues of pay. Guess what? When we did that, the Isle of Man received fantastic support from all regions of NAHT. You were there for us, we're there for you. Urge conference to fully support this motion. Thank you.
And there are no more speakers, so we are going to take a vote on this. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And against? Unanimously carried. Thank you, guys. Just a few finishing words from me, and the last time I get to bang the gavel. So this is very informative, so it would be good if you stay to listen. So as we draw this part of our conference to a close, it's worth pausing for a moment to reflect on what we've shared today. We've heard powerful voices, honest perspectives, and a collective determination that defines who we are as a profession. There has been challenge, there has been inspiration, and above all, there has been a clear sense of purpose. What stands out most is our unity, our shared commitment to doing what is right for our children, for our staff, and for the future of education. That commitment runs through every conversation, every contribution, and every moment of today and yesterday. If this conference has shown us anything, it's that we come together as professionals with integrity, courage, and belief. We are a force that can shape the future of education for the better. Thank you for your energy, your honesty, and your unwavering dedication. This may be the close of the session, but is far from the end of the work we continue together. And I so look forward to what comes next. Before I have other instructions, I'm just going to hand over to Rachel to discuss the social responsibility and conference feedback.
Thank you. So I realised that when I proposed that motion just a few minutes ago, I forgot to introduce myself. I have no excuse at this stage for not knowing the rules, and I am a stickler for the rules, like most school business leaders are. So, Rachel Younger, immediate past president. Colleagues, as many of you will know, social responsibility was a core priority of my presidential year. We established our social responsibility statement not as something to be simply written and never referenced again, but as something to be lived throughout every part of NAHT's work. It was your feedback from last year's conference that helped direct our social responsibility work for this conference. We've focused this year on sustainability across all levels of the conference, on improving accessibility and diversity in both the venue and our content, and ensuring that the legacy and impact of conference is felt not just by members, but by the community that we visit. This year, for the first time, we have been measuring the environmental impact of our annual conference. We have corrected all areas identified in our standing orders which members said were not accessible, and have ensured that our equality reps have had a key voice in the planning process. And this year we have introduced volunteering sessions for the first time, which through our work with Food Stock has meant we have provided free breakfasts to nearly 100 children in West Belfast. And through a generous donation from one of the attendees has meant that those free breakfasts are funded for another month. Conference, your feedback has made this possible and set our priorities. But we always seek to do even better whenever we can. So you will soon receive the conference feedback form through the app, and we would appreciate you completing that to help us know what aspects of this conference have been successful and where your ambitions are for us to build on in the future. Thank you.
Thank you to delegates who have indicated that they would like to attend the roundtable with DFE advisor Andrew O'Neill later today. If you have been selected to attend, you would have received an email this morning, and that meeting takes place immediately after this session in room 1A. This evening, before the charity gala dinner begins, there will be a drinks reception from 7 o'clock in the Riverside foyer, where the registration desk was, and we will then move into Hall 1AB for the dinner itself at 8 o'clock. Please note that the bar is cashless, and at the charity gala dinner, although if delegates wish to contribute a tip for the hospitality staff at the conference centre, please do remember to bring some cash for that. There will also be an opportunity to donate to the Remembering Srebrenica's charity as your chosen Vice President's charity this year. We also want to remind delegates that the Belfast Marathon will result in road closures tomorrow, and it is recommended that you add an extra hour to your planned journey time to the airport, especially if you are travelling in the morning. If you are going to the international airport, this is where you might need to write things down, guys. There is a coach transfer arranged that will run a shuttle service from the front of the SSE Arena, not the ICC. So that's the SSE Arena, from 7 until 6 p.m, approximately every 30 minutes. You could also use public transport from Grand Central Station, stands 9 and 10. It is the TransLink 300 shuttle service that you need. If you're going to Belfast City Airport, the only pickup point for the TransLink 600 service is at the stand of 20 at Grand Central Station. People who have requested reasonable adjustments should pre-book their service and ask for the nearest pickup point to the hotel. If you face any challenges that we can help with, please call Chris Kirkham-Knowles. His number is now on the screen. We've provided the most up-to-date information before the charity dinner. However, please do watch the conference app, as we will post any updates there also. On behalf of myself and the national officers, I would like to extend our sincere thanks to all delegates. Your contributions, your engagement and your willingness to share, challenge and support one another are what makes this conference so meaningful. It is your professionalism, your commitment and your collective voice that continue to strengthen our association and the wider education community. Thank you for the part each of you have played. We look forward to continuing this work together. I'd also just like to take a moment to recognise and thank those national executive members who have retired or stepped down since our last conference. Emily Jones, James Lacey, Joe O'Rourke, Joanne Sanchez-Thompson and Steve Mills. Your service to NHT and to the profession has been significant. You have given your time, your expertise and your unwavering commitment to representing school leaders and strengthening our collective voice. The impact of your work will continue to be felt long after your tenure, and we are deeply grateful for the difference you have made. On behalf of everyone here, On behalf of everybody here, thank you for your dedication and for all that you have contributed. Thank you to my fellow officers and members of National Exec who have ably supported the conference and me during this week. Thank you to all sponsors and conference guests for attending and participating in conference. Thank you to my presidential aide, the amazing Amanda Hume, for making sure that I have been in the right place at the right time and for her unfailing support in every step of conference. Thank you to the staff of the ICC Belfast who have supported us over this event. It's been a service like nothing else. And thank you to Visit Belfast, who have been crucial in bringing annual conference to Belfast this year, particularly with regards to the travel arrangements. Thank you to the AV team for their amazing support with all of our AV requirements. The hard work in the AV booth is essential to make sure a conference works seamlessly. I would also like to convey a huge thank you to Norma and Julia, our transcriptors to Signalise, who have provided subtitles for us this year. I think we can all agree they've done a fantastic job. I also want to take a moment to recognise the incredible work of all the staff behind this conference and the day-to-day running of NAHT. The level of organisation and commitment is second to none, from the meticulous planning to the clear and consistent communication, to the way you actively listen to us, your members, and our feedback and make each year even better than the last. It is genuinely commendable. On a personal note, I know I've done things very differently from previous presidents, but it's your support, your professionalism and your attention to detail that have made these first two-thirds of my term not just manageable, but truly rewarding. I simply couldn't have done it without each and every one of you, and you all know who you are. There's too many names to list, and I want to give people an early finish. So, don't worry, you only have to put up with me for one more third. And who knows, as Arnie says, I might be back.
Angie, on behalf of all our delegates, our wider members, please accept our sincere thanks and warm congratulations on hosting such an outstanding annual conference here in Belfast. The themes of choosing hope and leading with joy resonated strongly with school leaders here at conference, but also more widely across our union. The conference was exceptionally well managed, thoughtfully paced, and kept to time, while still allowing that time and space for open, respectful, and meaningful debate across all the relevant issues. Your leadership as our national president has set a positive, inclusive tone throughout, leaving us all feeling energized, hopeful, and proudly connected to the shared purpose as we head back to our schools next week. Thank you also for your care, commitment, and inspiring leadership as our president, and personally for the support, encouragement, and guidance during this past year as your vice president. On behalf of all our members, I want to say thanks and wish you the very best for this remaining time of your presidential year. Conference, your president, Angie Gibson.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing everyone at Annual Conference 2027 in Brighton. I now formally declare this conference closed, and I've provided 17 minutes back.